Hello, I'm Niamh Ni Mhaoileoin. This is my debut novel, Ordinary Saints. It tells the story of Jay, a queer Irish woman living in London who gets the quite unusual news that her older brother, who died in a tragic accident, may be made a Catholic saint. And then over the course of the novel, this news forces Jay to kind of interrogate some questions about her past, about her relationship with her family, her grief for Ferdia, and about the person that she wants to be. So I'm here in Waterstones Nottingham, and I'm going to tell you about a few of the books that have influenced my writing. So first of all, we're going to kick off with Dransition Baby, an absolute queer and trans classic, which I love. It was published in 2021, which was when I was really getting into my stride with my novel. It tells the story of three people, a cis woman, a trans woman, and a third person whose gender identity has kind of been torn by a process of transition and detransition, and they are trying to figure out whether they can collectively parent a child together. I absolutely love the way that this book, it's a queer classic in the sense that it tells the story of people who are trying to live the lives they want, trying to live lives that have meaning, when nothing in their experience, their upbringing, or their background has given them a blueprint for how to do that. It also really embraces the complexity, ambivalence, and sometimes contradiction of queer experience, and that's something that really fed into Ordinary Saints. And another name that I've spotted on the shelf is John McGahern. He's one of Ireland's great novelists and short story writers. While I was working on Ordinary Saints, I read The Dark, which is his second novel about a young man trying to come to terms with his own identity, and particularly with his sexuality and desires, in the context of a violent family and an incredibly repressive environment created by the Catholic Church. McGahern was really famously, that book was banned. He lost his job as a teacher as a result of that book, and he had to move abroad. He didn't live in Ireland for many years after that. So I think that he's a very inspiring writer for the times that we're in, but he also just writes with this incredible sensitivity and compassion, and again, really embraces the contradictions in our lives, that sometimes the people and institutions that we hate, we also have these deep connections of love and memory too, and you know, that we can accept and embrace that. The third book I want to talk about is one that's incredibly important to me, A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ezeki. It tells the story of a Japanese-American writer called Ruth, who discovers a diary washed up on a beach in Canada. Through that diary, she meets a deeply unhappy Japanese teenager called Nao, and Nao's great-grandmother, an anarchist, feminist, novelist, Buddhist nun. I absolutely love Ezeki's work for the lightness of the prose, even as she's dealing with really heavy emotional themes and complex intellectual questions. But I think the real impact that it had on me and on Ordinary Saints was in the way that Ruth Ezeki deals with Buddhist spirituality in this book, and it becomes a driving force for the characters' actions and for the plot, and I think asks the reader to do some really interesting spiritual reflection.